Erin Clifford, welcome to the Fieldswell Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
It's my pleasure. You are a certified professional counselor, corporate wellness consultant, and managing director at Clifford Law Offices. So you've seen firsthand how high pressure careers can take a toll on people, and you've made it your mission to help professionals build healthier, more fulfilling lives.
I have. And it's, even though my background's a little different, it really does help me because I get what it's like to be on the go all the time, but yet still wanting to find ways to have wellness and, spend time in other areas instead of just your career.
Sure. So I'm curious, what initially was it that led you to pursue a deeper career in wellness? Did you hit a breaking point in your career? Did you see what other people were going through and thought you could help them? Bring us back to that moment.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, really for me, when I was teaching high school, I initially taught high school after college, and I really saw for myself, I was getting burned out, the teachers were, and all my students' parents were. And, I was debating between going and being a counselor or going and being a lawyer, and I ended up following in my family's footsteps.
Yeah.
And then when I came out of law school, I was kind of right back there. I was struggling with the burnout. My colleagues were, my friends that were lawyers were. And it really made me realize no matter what walk of life you're from, whatever your career is, that it can be really hard when you're constantly on the go, taking care of families to really find that time. So I figured out ways to help myself. And then it really inspired me to go back and become a health and wellness coach and then eventually pursue that master's in mental health counseling because I really realized that it all stems from that mental and emotional health. It's not just about the physical stuff.
Yeah, it's so true. That relationship you have with yourself and how to properly take care of yourself. I think I studied for my health and wellness coaching certification at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, and that taught me how to nourish myself from the inside out, something I didn't feel like I learned in the general education system.
For sure. I actually did that program too. That was the first
Nice.
program I did, which I thought was awesome. And
Yeah.
it was so much like this is a holistic approach. It wasn't
Uh-huh.
just, the one thing.
Yeah, you have to find what works for you. And I think people can get easily overwhelmed because there really are so many different avenues to go down in regard to how to like elevate your well-being.
Exactly. And you really just need to figure out what works for you
Mhm.
and really what you need at this time in your life. As you know, things change depending on your lifestyle, what you're going through physically with your families.
Yeah.
So really just taking a, deep dive at that moment into what's going to make you full and,
Totally. Right. Like being able to pivot and adjust the routine as you go, depending on what you're going through. You are now an author. First of all, congratulations. I'm
yeah.
sure that's a big moment. And I want to bring your book into the chat. Tell us what inspired you to write Wellness Reimagined at this point in time.
So I've wanted to write a book for a really long time, since I was a kid, but really for the past 10 years. And I kind of sat down and started a few times, but I really needed to get that mental health angle to get exactly what I wanted. And so when I was working with people and I started doing a lot of corporate programming, I just realized that it would really be helpful if people had a go-to guide that they could use to really just help them shape their own wellness programs.
Mm-hmm. And what does reimagined mean in terms of the title of this book?
I wanted people to think of wellness as, what we've been talking about, much more holistic. It's, when you're picking a nutrition plan or an exercise plan, it's not just about what's physically good for you. It's all about what's emotionally, spiritually, mentally good for you, what works with your lifestyle, and realizing that no matter how busy you are, something is better than nothing. And you can really get lots of pockets of self-care into your daily life.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, as you were writing this book, I'm sure this has culminated, like the knowledge has culminated over the past at least decade of you working with other individuals in the wellness space. Are there like common top problems or like complaints individuals come to you with that are covered in this book?
There are, a big thing is people feel like they can't fit it in, or they feel like to be well, they have to do all of this stuff and it's like a second job. So they just don't make time for it. I also work with a lot of people that are going through life transitions. Maybe they're new parents, they're looking even at like retirement, and they're trying to figure out, how do I make my next chapter really fulfilling?
Yeah.
And so they're interested in exploring other life domains too.
Mhm. And what does fulfilling mean to you, like in terms of well-being? I know I've heard you talk about building a flexible, fulfilling wellness routine. Can we like envision that? Can you explain to what that would look like?
Sure. To me, it's about, not just looking at your career and your finances, which are really important, but
Mhm.
making sure you make time for the other things that bring you joy and wellness, like, friends and family, community. I always tell my clients, all the success in the world can't hug you back.
Uh,
And, beyond the different, obviously self care and health initiatives, we also have to look at other things like personal development. We know as we age, as we go through life, something that can be really fulfilling is learning new things, traveling, also contributing to the world. I get so much out of being able to give back, and a lot of my clients do too. And I don't think they realize that,
yeah.
paying it forward can, really impact your whole wellness and life too.
100%. Everything shifted for me when instead of thinking of entering a situation or a room with what's in it for me, instead of how can I provide value and be of service? Because I wholeheartedly believe when you give, you are given.
I believe that too.
Mhm. And another thing with the personal development, I think of this has come to me recently, like how often do you update your iPhone to update all the programming? Every
Yeah.
couple of weeks. How often are you updating your own programming in your mind in regard to, listening to podcasts, reading new books, shifting your perspective? I think that is so important.
I really love that. I love that, idea of just like we update our phones and
Yeah.
computers, we need to update that for ourselves.
Uh-huh. You charge them throughout the night, you
Yeah.
update them, like just like we need sleep has been major for me too.
Oh, for sure.
Mhm.
And that's another thing with professionals. They always tell me, they can't get enough sleep. But a lot of times when I work with someone and talk to them,
Yeah.
they actually have more hours than they think. They're just doing things they don't need to be doing.
And what are an example of some of those things we are all likely doing that we don't need to be doing?
You've got to have a technology cutoff time,
Mm.
and sometimes we're the worst at keeping our boundaries
Yeah.
because, I'll hear a lot, well, they expect me to email them back at 8 at night. I'm like, well, do they really? They're like, well, I always do. Well, then you taught that person, right? That's
Right.
fine. So I really encourage people to have a technology cutoff time and, have a bedtime wind down where you're not just staying up all night streaming shows. I mean, there's so many things we could be
Yeah.
doing. And so just kind of keeping more of that boundary with yourself.
Totally. My phone sleeps on sleep mode in the kitchen from ideally 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. And that has given me so much more space in my day.
For
Just that
sure.
space from technology.
Yeah. And the other thing is, right, if you put your phone on that sleep do not disturb, you're also alerting anyone who contacts you through text that, oh, she's done for the day.
Right.
You may not get a response till the next morning.
Yeah, not available boundaries. But it's so true. Like when I miss that wind down routine, when the cortisol starts to lower and the
Mhm.
melatonin starts to increase as you wind down before bed, which helps with your sleep. Like if I miss that and I'm on technology, I'm tired when I lay in bed, but my mind's still active and it is so much harder
Mhm.
to fall asleep. I track my sleep with this Aura ring here, which I love.
Oh, I love that.
Mhm. Are there any like interesting or unique things you do with your personal daily routines that you can enlighten us with?
One thing I do is I always try when I get up in the morning to do something to set a positive mood. Whether that's, getting up and just not looking at my phone. I try
Mhm.
really hard not to look at my phone first thing in the morning and, and skip that snooze button so I can get moving.
Yeah.
And, whether that's, taking my golden retriever Daisy for a walk, or maybe it's one of the days I have a planned workout. And I always too try to pivot, so like this morning, I'm kind of run down. I wasn't feeling great. So
Mhm.
instead of going and working out with my trainer, which I usually do on Thursdays, I ended up just canceling. I went downstairs and I stretched and just kind of
Yeah.
spent a little bit more time at home. So I try to be flexible with my
Mm.
routines, and that's really important to me.
Mhm. Flexibility is so important and not being like so hard on yourself if one day you need to make
Hmm.
an adjustment.
For sure.
Mhm. But starting your day with intention is a game changer. I've heard this before. Think of if you open your phone right away, first thing in the morning, number one, you're now have all these dopamine hits, perhaps from all the messages and social media likes and what have you, but you're letting all those people into your sacred space
Oh, I love that.
first thing in the morning, and you're responding instead of starting your day with intention. Today is going to be an amazing day. Thank you for this day. And when you start with gratitude and intention, I believe you're programming your mind for what's to come, and it goes out into the world looking for things that are in alignment with what you said today is going to be like.
Exactly. And a big thing I like to do myself and with my clients is I want everyone to have a gratitude practice. Whether that is getting up and just thinking about or writing down 5 things you're grateful for. I encourage people to put gratitude triggers all over their spaces. So they have little reminders of things. As we all know, we go through challenging days or challenging times, but if you can remind yourself of all the good things that are in your life and the things that make you happy, it can have a huge impact.
So say one of our listeners is just starting out. They've heard about this wellness thing. They want to give it a try. How can they design a plan that truly aligns with their lifestyle and goals? What's the first step?
So I always tell people, in terms of a first step, we want to start small, but I also encourage people to be really specific about their goal, what it is that they want to do, and to find their why. The why is so important because it gets you through those challenging times or when you have a setback. As I'm sure you know from working with people might be going great for a while and then we have a setback. So how do we sort of plan for that? And when I'm thinking about someone's why, I'm really thinking about pulling that onion back. I will get people that come to me that say, busy professional, they've got a diagnosis. And, their doctor's like, you got to change your whole life or, you're physically not going to be here sometimes. Yeah. And sometimes that's not enough for them. Just knowing that, they've got to really think, okay, why do I want to be here? What's important to me? Is it my family? Is it these personal and professional goals that I have? Maybe I want to hang out and be on the ground with my grandkids having fun. And so really getting to that, I think, is a good thing, is what do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? And then just start small. One routine, one simple thing you can add in and build from there.
I've heard you reference, which I really love, are SMART goals. So they're specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. The clearer you can get on your goals, the better.
For sure. And, and I always, when I'm working with someone on SMART goals, I like to build them out, so in terms of that, how do you achieve this? What's your action plan? Let's say you want to work out 3 times a week. Well, how are we going to make that happen?
Yeah.
What are the habits you need to build in to make that happen? Because if you just put that down, it's not going to be as forward moving as you might think.
Right. Like, let's put it in your calendar. What time are we going? Yeah. Where are we going? Who's there to hold us accountable?
Exactly.
Yeah. How detailed can we get? Say there's a client who comes into you and they just feel so lost and don't even know like what they want.
Yeah, when I get that, and I actually do this with all my clients, and I talk about this in my book, I always start with, what are your values? What are the top 5 values and priorities you have? Because that's a good place to start thinking about what's important to you, whether that's those, professional and personal goals, but it can also inspire your wellness goals too.
And I mean, I think it's for me, it's starting to form a relationship with yourself, because I think when you make choices that are in alignment with your optimal well-being, when you start taking better care of self, you start to feel safer in your own body because you're trusting your choices. You start to get more confident and you will start to feel that momentum. It may not be an overnight thing, but it really will change the game for you long term.
No, I totally believe that. And that's really, why even when I was writing my book, I spent some time in part 1, really having people kind of take a deep dive into kind of getting to know themselves better and what's important to them, because, that's just so important. And we don't really take, just like we don't reboot our phones or ourselves all the time, we don't take the time to do that enough. Maybe you haven't looked in 10 years, what are you at now?
Yeah, or we could be running, on outdated programming that's been instilled in our minds since before we were 6 years old, and it's time to update.
Exactly.
I actually like to go back to when we were talking about all these different areas of wellness. Like this, is it the circle of life or the wheel of life that we learned at IIN?
I believe I think it's a circle of life.
It's helpful for people to look at that. And I love with clients going through it, like, okay, rate yourself 1 to 10. How is your career going? Like, how are
Mhm.
your finances? How's your fitness life? How are your relationships? How's your family? How's your spirituality? Because then they can really start to see, oh, wait, like that's area is a 10, but this area is like a 3. And then you can really dive in and work more on that area.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and that's really like, I've kind of taken my own spin on that and created, my wheel of harmony, I call it, because I'm a big
Mm.
fan. I don't believe in work-life balance. I don't think
No.
it's possible to have
Yeah.
equal percentages.
Right.
So I kind of subscribe to that harmony concept. So I really do. I have my wheel and I'm like, okay, where are you at in these different areas?
Yeah.
But also, like, what are the couple you want to work on, right? You don't
Right.
have to work on everything right now.
Right.
Just like pick your top 2 or 3 and we can start building goals around that.
Yeah, at different phases of your life, different areas are going to require
Mhm.
more attention or less attention, and that's the harmony.
Yeah, exactly.
Your life is very full. What's like one non-negotiable you have in regard to protecting your energy?
My non-negotiable is if somebody asks me to do something, whether it's a social thing or it's a extra kind of work thing, maybe take on a committee on a board I'm on or that kind of stuff. If I always go with my gut. I know right away whether deep down I have time to do this or I want to do this. And I try to honor that because I haven't always been good about that. Like I'll
Yeah.
feel bad. And now I try to honor that. And I've also realized that a no now is not a no forever. If I'm going through a busy time, it's okay for me to say to somebody, hey, I would love to do this. I don't have time in my schedule, but keep me in mind for next time. And I've really built a great group of friends, especially my girlfriends. And we're just so honest with each other. Like if we have plans and someone doesn't feel good, we just tell each other now.
Yeah.
And so I think like being honest, with being true to yourself, having that community and friend group that you can be like that with is just so a non-negotiable, so important to me.
It is so important. Community and like a great group of girlfriends or
Yeah.
friends is really incredible. And saying no and understanding if someone says no to you, it can just mean not right now. And that no is really powerful. I think for me, I was always and always have been like a yes person. I want to say yes to all the things, want to live life to the fullest. But it's so important I protect my energy because I want to show up as my best self. And when your cup is depleted because you're over giving, you're overextending your time and your energy, you're going to start to see cuts in other areas of your life.
For sure. For sure.
So, what would you say is one small shift our listeners can make today that would lead to transformation in their lives?
I think one small shift is, and I like to say it this way, knowing what your jam is that can really like turn things around for you in terms of your mood, your energy. So, for instance, some people, if they are kind of traveling a lot or they're really busy, even if they can get in that like 10-minute workout, it really helps them. Some people really need to just, if I can kind of dial in my nutrition a little bit, that's something that kind of just makes me feel like myself and helps me. Some people, it's the mindfulness, spending time with your pet, whatever it is, but just know for yourself, like what's the thing that you're going to need to kind of just like shift things, turn things around for you. And that no matter how busy you are, you don't want to give up, even if it's making it done in a smaller way than you can do during other times.
Life is going to happen. And so I think it's so important, to your point, to have something to be able to shift your energy and to have a tool belt of whether it, again, you enjoy a walk, you enjoy playing with your puppy, you enjoy yoga, you enjoy meditation. What is your thing when you really need a moment of wellness?
Yeah.
Because it's easy to practice wellness when everything is going well. Right?
Exactly. It's when it's not going well, that's when we need it the most.
Yeah. So how do we stay grounded in those most challenging moments? Like, have you ever had a moment in your life where you're like, oh my gosh, things have gone like way south.
Yeah.
How did we get here? How do I get myself back?
Yeah. And that's really where, for me, having routines in place is helpful, because if I've got set routines that I keep flexible, when I have those moments and I get totally off track, I've got something to return to. Think about it. If you went on vacation for a week and you kind of overindulged, you got out of your routine, and then you come home. Well, if you have something to return to, it's not a big deal. But if you don't have anything in place, it can be really hard to then motivate yourself and shift.
Right. You're like, anything goes.
Yeah.
Hope one day we get back to where we were. I'm reading this book right now, Napoleon Hill, Outwitting the Devil. And one of the quotes is that the biggest obstacle you face is in your own mind, and it's your
Mhm.
thinking. And another one of his quotes is, and back to our conversation about goals, was that goals, the purpose of goals is to entice you to become the person it takes to achieve them.
Yeah.
And I love that so much for our listeners, because like at the end of the day, is it really about the goal, or is it about who you need to become in order to achieve that goal?
I really love that, because a lot of times when we're trying to work towards something, it's
Yeah.
really when we learn the most about ourselves. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's that, well, maybe that's not even the thing I wanted.
Right. Yeah, it's so true. And so I love thinking about goals in that way, and why goals are important to entice you to keep moving toward who
Mhm.
you want to become. And having a wellness routine, I believe like feeling well has been my gateway to transformation, because when I feel well, my energy is in an optimal state, and I feel like I'm in like a master attractor mode, because
Yeah.
I'm vibrating radiant energy, because I'm getting my good night's sleep. I'm eating nourishing foods. I'm moving my body every day. So like this wellness thing, it's not a joke. Like this is for real. This book
Yeah.
is so important.
And it really works,
It works. It really works. Erin, as we wrap up, what's the biggest takeaway you hope readers walk away with after reading Wellness Reimagined?
My biggest takeaway is that I hope everybody walks away and they're inspired that they can have more wellness in their lives, that it's easy to do it. You can, easily kind of shift when you need to, but, it's really about choose your own wellness adventure, and just kind of make what works for you.
Mm-hmm. And I've been realizing recently, like with longevity upon us, we're realizing, I actually met Kathy, who connected us at Brian Johnson's Don't Die Summit in LA. And longevity is upon us. We're going to be able to live much longer lives, and it's important that we feel well for a lifetime.
Exactly. And I think we know now how important, being well is, and like how it can really just be so advantageous for all areas of our lives, and including how long we're here to do all the things that we want to do.
Mm-hmm. So true. Where can our listeners find you?
So your listeners can find me. I'm, on Instagram, Erin Wellness, as well as on Facebook, LinkedIn, and my book Wellness Reimagined is available on Amazon and other major retailers.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.